This is his last meeting.
Yes.
I'll bring the January 14th, 2020 regular Planning and Zoning Commission meeting to order. Will you please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can I get a roll call, please?
Carey?
Here.
Bishop?
Here.
Hampi?
Here.
Latham?
Here.
Kimball?
Here. All right, we've got a quorum tonight. John, do we have any amendments to the agenda?
There's none.
Okay. Do we have any ceremonies, announcements, appointments, or presentation?
None as well.
Okay. Declarations of conflict amongst commissioners?
Nope.
No.
Okay. Just want to put it out there that although it is not a conflict of interest, my company does do work for Greenstone, but does not work on their Montrose project. So just want to disclose that. Consent calendar, onto that. Mr. Manley.
Yes, item A is the minutes from the December 10th, 2019 meeting. Item B is the special call meeting minutes from the December 18th, 2019 meeting. Item C is the reasoned decision of the Daeland Properties, file number ANNX 12, 2019. The item D is the reasoned decision from the Tedder Annexation, file ANNX 13, 2019. Item E is the reasoned decision from the Quiet Ridge Annexation, ANNX 15, 2019. Item F is the reasoned decision for the Quiet Ridge Subdivision, file number SUBD 19, 2019. Item G is the reasoned decision for Tranquil Meadows Annexation, file number ANNX 14, 2019. And item H is the reasoned decision for Tranquil Meadows Subdivision, file number SUBD 18, 2019.
Okay. For a motion for approval of the consent calendar?
I move to approve the consent calendar.
I'll second that.
Been moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Davis? Sorry. Carey?
Yes.
Bishop?
Yes.
Latham?
Yes.
Kimball?
Yes.
Hampi?
Yes.
Okay. Up next, citizen issues. This is reserved for anybody out here in the audience who would like to speak on an item that is not on either tonight's agenda or a future night's agenda, but just has general questions or comments for the commission. Seeing none. Unfinished and old business. Mr.
There's
Manley?
none.
Okay. And that brings us to the meat of our meeting tonight, which is the public hearings. So I see a lot of people out here that I haven't normally seen before. So we have some sign-up sheets in the back. If you wish to speak tonight on any public hearing in particular, please sign up in the back and bring that sheet up here to the clerk, and she will be happy to make sure that we hear you speak. And with that, I will open the Corbin Meadows subdivision file SUBD 0021-2019. Mr. Ethan Porter.
Good evening, Commissioners. Ethan Porter here with the Planner One with the City of Post Falls. Here to present Corbin Meadows Subdivision. This is case file SUBD-21-2019. Looking at this subdivision, the owner is John Corbin and Carol Ann Barton, and the applicant is Ace Solutions LLC, who is here tonight to represent them. The requested action tonight is the applicant has requested for the review of the subdivision of approximately 20 acres into 77 single-family residential R1 lots. Looking here, you can see the project is Hatched in red, it's the south of Bluegrass Lane here, which is in the county, and then east and west is Hope Avenue. And then this property is east of Greens Ferry here, running north and south, and then Cecil as well, running north and south over here. So you can kind of see it's between Greens Ferry and Cecil. Greens Ferry Elementary School is located to the west. Looking at some of the additional information on the site, you can see that it's large lot residential. There's no significant characteristics for the physical land itself. The water provider is Ross Point Water District, which in your staff report you can see, I believe in Exhibit A4, there is a will serve letter from them. The sewer provider would be the City of Post Falls, and as mentioned before, there are 77 single-family residential lots that are proposed in a single phase. The density for this would be 3.85 units per acre. Looking at the subdivision review criteria, the first one regarding the water supply, there is adequate capacity to serve this based on the exhibit that I just mentioned from Ross Point Water District for the will serve letter. Looking at the second review criteria, you can see that it talks about the public sewage. The sanitary sewer for this site would be it is adequate, and there is capacity for the City of Post Falls to provide for this subdivision. Looking at the third one, it discusses the streets and the consistency with the transportation element of the comprehensive plan. Here you can see the proposed layout for the Corbin Meadows subdivision. Currently the lots have been reviewed by staff, and there doesn't appear to be any inconsistency with standards as far as lot width and max lot size. So they do have those minimum standards being met, as well as you can see that south there is projected to be a connection to the south with the road located right here. As well, there's no negative impacts to traffic flow that this is presenting based on our transportation master plan and review from city staff. With that being said, I will bring up Rob Paulus to discuss furthermore the 600 feet, I believe is what it is, to the east here of what's being proposed there for this subdivision as well. So I'll let Rob take it away.
Mr. Paulus.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. When this property was annexed in, one of the concerns that was brought up was as the property moves into subdivision, how to handle Bluegrass, otherwise known by the city as Hope Avenue, and that remaining 600 and some odd feet between Greens Ferry Road and the project. Currently, Hope Avenue or Bluegrass from Cecil Road, which is on the far east side of the project, is paved up to this project's eastern boundary. Normally with subdivision development, it is a requirement on a roadway where there isn't asphalt for the developer to be responsible for half the road width plus an additional 10 feet. In this case, for a minor collector roadway, that would be about a 36-foot width paving job that they would have to do. We took a look at the fire requirements, which is normally a minimum 20-foot paved area, and then took a look at our own standards and said if we put in a roadway which is 28 feet in width, which meets minimum fire requirements, goes a little bit beyond the center line requirements, and is enough roadway to allow for parking on one side plus 2 lanes, we could take that remaining 8 feet of asphalt and have the developer utilize that to pave the 600 feet between Greens Ferry and the project. It's almost an exact wash in terms of asphalt quantity. And in our discussions with the developer, they were willing to do that. So that would allow for a continuous pavement from Greens Ferry to Cecil Road, which has benefits, one, for the subdivision, in that the people who are going to be living out there will have better access from 2 routes. It is also a benefit to emergency services. They have good paved access from both ends, and to the greater community as well. It has benefits in that it will allow people from the Tullamore subdivision an alternate route to Greens Ferry Road to access, whether it's the elementary school over there, or if they were looking to utilize Greens Ferry to get up to the traffic signal that's under construction at Greens Ferry and Prairie, or down to Pole Line Avenue instead of utilizing Cecil. a little bit complicated and a little bit out of the norm, but I hope that gives you a better understanding of why we're doing something a little bit different, and any questions you might have on that.
I do have one question, Rob. Because that's outside of the city, that little strip, would that be maintained by the city, or would it be?
The City of Post Falls works with the Post Falls Highway District. We have a number of memorandums of understanding with them, and there are some portions of City of Post Falls roadways that, because of where they're at, it's more convenient for Post Falls Highway District to plow them or do a little bit of work for us on those. And conversely, we do that for Post Falls Highway District in some areas. This is a location that, as it's paved, we would then go back to Post Falls Highway District and talk with them. Does it make more sense for the city to plow it or for Post Falls Highway District? It may fall into that realm of the City of Post Falls, since we are going to have all these additional streets that are going to be built with the subdivision itself. And that might be part of the routing that we would be driving on anyway. But again, that's something that we need to take a look at and talk with Post Falls Highway District. If you're going to be driving on it with a plow truck, to drop the plow blade for 600 feet isn't a big deal.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
Will Hope and Bluegrass be a continuous road?
Yes, Hope, the City of Post Falls calls it Hope Avenue,
Uh-huh.
and that's what we have done from Highway 41. We will change the name of the road to Hope Avenue with the subdivision.
The Bluegrass portion will be
The
changed?
Bluegrass
and it'll be through.
portion will become Hope.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Ethan?
To piggyback off of Rob as well, looking at this site, during the annexation process, there was the existing well site, which is located here. Currently, they're showing an access easement for maintenance on this existing well. Currently serves approximately 27 homes up in this area. There is easements on the east side as well as the easement for access here to maintain this existing well and to eventually turn those water rights over once all the users have been annexed into the city. Currently, within the subdivision kind of construction plans as well in that stage, there will be minor modifications if needed to the water system as well, if roads need to be moved or water lines adjusted as well. So just to inform you on that. Continuing on with the subdivision review criteria, looking at the fourth one, basically discusses topographical conditions presenting hazards. There hasn't been any on this site that have been identified for staff's review. Also looking at the fifth review criteria, we're looking at the zoning, and the proposed zone and use conforms to other requirements found in this code. Looking at the zoning map, currently this was presented to you for the annexation portion as R1, so that would conform to basically your R1 standards and your R1 zoning in this area as well. Looking at the sixth review criteria, you're looking at the developer making adequate plans to ensure that a community will bear no more than its fair share of cost to provide services. This is done through impact fees through the building permit application process, as well as assessing those impact fees and applying them to that building permit. Here are the agencies that were routed for review, as you can see here. And then comments received back were from Post Falls Police Department and Kootenai County Fire and Rescue, who remained neutral on this project. Do you have any questions for staff at this time?
No. Okay. Thank you, Ethan. At this point, we will have the applicant come up. You have 15 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Roger Glessner with Ace Solutions, 609 North Calgary Court, Post Falls, Idaho, and we represent the owners on this project. Thank you for the report on that, staff. We do agree with the city staff, what their findings and facts on this project. A couple things I would like to highlight during the annexation process in front of this board. There were some questions on the water system and also the access on Bluegrass going out to Greens Ferry. We realized that, the subdivisions that came before this one to the east, there were barricades in place because the people didn't want those folks to inundate their road. So we agree with the city that we would pave that section of bluegrass between the project and Greens Ferry Road. In addition to that, we will be running a sewer main down there to tie into Greens Ferry Road at the same time. And then one of the other issues that came up was with the existing water system that's in there. There is a water main that runs through the property, kind of a little bit left of center that runs down through there. And we realize that it's there. We don't know the exact location at this time, but we do agree to relocate that within an easement and keep that operational for that system until at such time they don't need it. There's also, and it loops around and it also comes up the east side of the property as well. And we will create an easement there so that they can maintain their line within that. In addition to that, they do have an existing well and reservoir, and so we have created a lot for that. We're not going to sell them the lot, but we'll give them easements or whatever they need to be able to maintain their system and stay there. And at some time, if that system is ever abandoned, that could turn into a residential lot at that point. We do acknowledge the street going to the south for future connection to the south, and with a water main extending down there as well. You might notice on the right-hand side there is one large lot there that is one of the owners, and she has a pool there, and she has some physical problems, her daughter does, and so they need to maintain that pool, and they want to keep that house until some later date. So we created a big lot around that so that she could stay there for now. And in doing that, we had to swing the street out and around there. So we ended up with some kind of odd lots along that east side. One of them is a tract that will be left as an open space. We're not sure what the use would be. For now, it's an open space. We don't want to call it a pocket park or anything like that at this time, but it's going to be left as an open space maintained by the homeowners association. As Rob was explaining, bluegrass will be paved from the center south and with curb and gutter and 10-foot, I believe it's a 10-foot utility or multi-use path along there. And then going from the project on the west side out to Greens Ferry would be just a paved section of road over the new sewer line. I know that there was a little bit of contention with some of the property owners around there, but one thing that this development will do is I think it'll take the burden off of the people that do have to maintain bluegrass at this time. And so hopefully that's a positive for them. If you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Have any questions for the applicant?
No.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Glassner. At this time, do we have any public? Okay. We have one person. It is Jacob, excuse me if I butchered this, Leasley? All right. So, outstanding. Jacob Lisley, he is in opposition and wishes to speak. Mr. Lisley, will you please state your name and address for the record? And you have 5 minutes.
Jacob Lisley. My friends call me Jacob. I live in Post Falls at 3184 North Kernan Drive, about 500, maybe half a baseball field to the project that's being built. Basically, I'm coming here as a concerned citizen. I spent 38 years in the military, and I retired here, and I've lived in Kootenai County for 15 years. I've lived at the location here 2 years. My wife and I downsized because we realized as we get older, I don't need to have a tractor to push snow around. When I've been driving around this community in the last 15 years, my yellow light started coming on, like on the dash of an aircraft, concern. There's a warning. And then lately, driving around, seeing the amount of building going on, and especially high-density apartments, and then I noticed this opening, and I understand these are lower cost homes, which usually attracts people, first-time home builders, with usually building families. Now, I look at the infrastructure that we have here, and I look at the services we have here, and I see they've been dwindling. That's when my red light came on. Our mail gets delivered like 5 o'clock because the post office got there. The snow can't be removed because they're too busy. And by the time they move the snow, it usually winds up having an iceberg in front of my house when they move it. And then we run into different things that shouldn't be there. Like example, they sometimes forget to pick up our trash because they're too doggone busy because the town is growing so fast. Now my question is, those houses that are building behind us, I don't know if it's fair. They're going to be a lower cost than the houses that we live in, and that naturally are not going to be built as well. And with houses behind there, and a tax structure, tax base is based on how much your house is valued at. So if we're moving houses in they're less value, less taxes, I don't see where that helps the city or the community, especially being close to houses that are in the bracket of the middle 300,000. So my question is there some reason why we can't build houses equal to the community? Is there a reason we need to build a house of less value? Is there a reason for that? Me, with my experience, running around for the last 38 years, I owned 8 houses. 6 were new, and they were in new communities. And I've seen this thing happen. I mean, I had to move because my kids were being bused to a different school because the infrastructure wasn't there. They had other students living in trailers because the infrastructure wasn't there. I'm concerned, has the planning been going on? Is the infrastructure there for this? I don't know. Have we planned it? What are we fixing to do to our community? I am concerned. The red light's on, and I have my right to speak. And I'm going to do like my grandfather says. Say what you're going to say, then set your butt down. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right. Sir, would you like to come up to speak? No, okay. Ma'am, okay, will you please grab a sign-up sheet and fill that out, and then you can take this time as a reminder to anyone else out there who might be here on another project that if you would like to speak, please fill out a sign-up sheet and bring it up here to the front prior to the public hearing. Thank you, Shannon.
It's been about 10 years for me. Yeah, it's been a long time.
Oh, my. Barba Maxalak? Did I get that?
Not even close.
Not even close. I'm sorry. Barbara, will you please state your name?
Mac Isaac.
Mac Isaac.
Like 2 words.
Okay. IML. Okay, will you please state your name and address for the record?
Barbara Mac Isaac. My address is 3183 Kiernan Drive.
Okay.
In Post Falls. And I am Jake's neighbor across the street. My husband and I purchased our home about 3 years ago, watched it being built, moved into this nice neighborhood. It is a higher price point. With all of our upgrades, we have over $400,000 into our home. Shortly after we moved in, we had dirt fields all around us, and houses to the north of us went in, and they are a much cheaper home than what we have. And already we can see the difference in how their neighborhood looks compared to ours. And I believe that it has impacted our home values. To the other side, to the south of us, we've had, I think they said, 6 to 8 different builders come in. There are about 33 lots, and everybody's got a piece of the pie. And they're all coming together, but you can tell that the price point is higher. It's similar to ours. So we've got houses that are doing us some good on one side and not so good on the other. We live at the top right corner, right behind that lot there. We live by the barriers. We see the people zooming up and down already, even though there's potholes in that road that I'm sure have done a lot of significant damage to the cars that go through there. We know that it's going to be a thoroughfare once that opens up, and people are going to just be speeding by. We are very concerned, and we second everything that Jake has said, very concerned in our property values being affected. Near our neighborhood, there is a group of homes built by Monogram. They're very small lots, but they are nicely done. They are beautiful homes. They may not be to our price point, but they look like a nice home that you would be proud to live in. They're not a cookie cutter home. If this is going to go through, we would like to see something done to where the homes are maybe not the price point of ours, but not the price point of what we have already that have gone in. You're looking at, high 100s, maybe 187 to 230 in the homes across the street, where we've all paid $350 to $400 for our homes. We are just extremely concerned of the traffic. We don't have, like Jake was talking about, the infrastructure. We don't have the grocery stores to accommodate. Walmart is an absolute mess because that's where everybody goes. We have Super One, but it's across town. We don't have a Safeway. We don't have an Albertsons. We don't have much in the way of choices. Tullamore is a beautiful community, but now they've put in all those apartments, and it's my understanding that they're filling up. But we are not adjusting to that growth and taking into account all of this growth. Post Falls is a very small community, or it was. You hear now that Coeur d'Alene is the new Orange County, California. Well, that's where I'm from, and I moved up here, followed my daughter for my grandkids, and I felt like I had died and gone to heaven when I moved up here 6 years ago. But the growth in this town is, I think, growing much too fast, far too eager to add more homes, more people, build, but we don't have anything to spread that out and give these people more options. So all the people in Post Falls are starting to suffer because of it. And if you read the editorials in the Coeur d'Alene Press, people are constantly complaining about not just the crowds, but...
We're going to have to ask you to wrap it up.
Okay, but we have to make do. We have to plan for that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Glassner. For the record, Ms. McIsaac was in opposition. Forgot to mention that.
Yeah, I would like to just touch on the what we think will go into this subdivision. And we're looking at homes that are in the low $300,000 range, and so that's the kind of quality of home that we're hoping to put in here. I don't know if we can guarantee that, but that's what we're looking to do. And so, they're not trying to build the least expensive home here, not at all. Other than that, I hear their concerns. They sound like they're more global, though, as far as how the city is growing and stuff that's going on within the city and the commercial development that may not be coming on as fast as the residential, which typically it doesn't. Typically, the residential go in until the demand is there, then the commercial will come in. And so maybe in the near future, we'll see more commercial growth to accommodate some of the concerns with Walmart or whatever they were. I think that's all I have to say. Does anybody have any questions for me?
Any questions for the applicant?
No.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any questions for staff before we close the public hearing? Okay, seeing none, close the public hearing and open it up to commissioner comments. Thoughts?
I don't have any problem with this development. I think the lots are a little bit larger size. I think it's been well thought through for continuity. It connects the two areas of Post Falls. It's almost an island. It's a peninsula of Kootenai County that's kind of tying in. I know I commiserate with a lot of the consensus of Post Falls. It's growing fast, and it is. And the problem is that the lots are getting smaller and the homes are getting more expensive. And that's for a variety of reasons. It's just getting more expensive to build from subcontractors and suppliers and land and a lot of things. And so what happens is a $200,000 house is not what we thought of as a $200,000 house, and a $300,000 house is not a fancy home like it was 20 years ago. So it's and so sometimes the product turns into cracker box or starter homes, but that's all that some people can afford. And sometimes I see the editorials in the newspaper that talks about how our kids are being priced out of the market, and there needs to be more entry-level homes for the younger people. So I kind of see two sides to that. So that's what's I agree. I think it's very problematic, and it's growing pains, I think, is the one word to sum it all up. So, but anyway, but just in this subdivision, on its own merit, I think it's well planned out and thought out. And I don't see any negatives to it.
Okay. Any other commission members want to weigh in on this?
I pretty much agree with Mark, too, on it. I mean, I understand everybody's concerns. I've seen it going on for 25 years now. I've lived here. But the growth is here, and we do have to look at growth for entry-level homes as well as high-end homes, spread it across. So I hear the same thing Mark does, that we're just running out of lower houses that first-time buyers can't even think about affording. So, and that's kind of a natural extension of what's going on in that area.
Okay. I'll weigh in on this a little bit. So as a lot of people, or many people here may or may not know, we are a quasi-judicial board, which means that we have a set of standards that are set forth by the city as well, our city code as well as the state code, that says that we have to review a subdivision based on city code and the state code and determine whether it meets those criteria. And those criteria were those that were laid out in the staff report.
I'm seeing if I can have them pull them up for you for ease of reference.
Thank you.
There's one.
So there were, I think, 6 subdivision review criteria. And based on the information presented by the applicant, and hearing no testimony to the contrary, it would appear that it does meet those review criteria. And so if there's any other commission comments, if there's none, I'd look for a motion.
I will. I move to recommend approval of Corbin Meadows subdivision SUBD-0021-2019, subject to conditions 1 through 10 in the staff report.
Might I correct you before there's a second? You would be making an approval, not a recommendation. You're the final decision maker this evening.
Okay, I'm
This does
sorry.
not go forward to
I
the
move
council.
to approve.
Okay.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Can we get a roll call, please?
Carrie,
Yes.
Bishop,
Yes.
Latham,
Yes.
Ampe,
Yes.
Kimball,
Yes. Okay. And so on to item B, under public hearings, the Green Meadows East subdivision file, SUBD 0020-2019. Mr. Porter.
Evening again, Commissioners. I'm here, Ethan, presenting the Green Meadows East subdivision. This is case file SUBD-20-2019. The owner is River City Properties LLC, and the applicant is Eric Olson from Olson Engineering, who is here tonight to represent. The requested action tonight is to review the requested subdivision of approximately 19.14 acres into 69 single-family residential lots. So during the annexation process, here is what they proposed for the annexation. This is approved as you can see the R2 and the north part of R2 and then the CCS. This subdivision is only going to be during the for the southern portion here on this line. These two R1 sections here, which is a southern portion, as you can see right here. So this is east of Green Meadow subdivision here. This is north of Killdeer, and then between Greens Ferry Road running north and south and Cecil, well, proposed to be Cecil, one future to be here, but the subdivision does take part north of Killdeer. Looking at some additional information, it's agricultural use currently. There's no significant characteristics of the site that is to be explained or brought up. The water provider is Ross Point Water District, which I believe is in your staff report exhibit A6. Looking at the sewer, the city of Post Falls would provide the sewer. And then again, this is 69 single family lots in a single phase to be developed. That is the proposal, and the density of this subdivision would be 3.61 units per acre. Looking at the review criteria again, starting with the first one regarding the water supply, again mentioned Ross Point Water would be the water provider, which they do provide a will serve letter to serve this subdivision. Looking at the second review criteria, we're looking at the sanitary sewer, which would be provided by City of Post Falls. There is capacity and provisions for this subdivision. And then looking at the third review criteria for the streets and the consistency with the transportation element of the comprehensive plan. You can see here that there is the southern part, this up here, this little dashed line and the hatch mark is that northern part, so we're only focusing on the southern half of that area. Here you can see the street layout, which there's no negative impacts that staff has seen for this to present. Currently along Killdeer here, you can see that the northern part would be constructed with a multi-use trail, and then the road would be constructed as well, as far as providing access from Greens Ferry to Cecil across east and west. Staff has reviewed this, and they see that it meets the R1 standards for the minimum lot area of 6,500 square feet and the minimum lot width of 60 feet. So they are either well above it or right at that minimum for these lots. Currently, this would, like I said, provide pedestrian access and further connectivity between east and west to Greens Ferry and Cecil. Again, looking here, we can see that this portion here would be the construction of that northern half of the road. As future development continues and annexation comes through, the southern part, if they decide to do that, that would then further be constructed to have a sidewalk and frontage improvements along Killdeer on the southern part as well. Now, looking at the fourth review criteria, we can see that the soil and topographical conditions, there are no hazards presented by these on this site. And then the fifth review criteria, we're looking at the zoning for this and the proposed use conforms, which previously annexed in as R1. This would conform to R1 standards and meets the zoning requirement for that. The sixth review criteria discusses the community not bearing more than its fair share of costs, which again, as mentioned in the previous presentation, this would be done through the building permit and the impact fees associated with those permits. Here are the agencies that it was routed to. And the comments received back were from Post Falls Police Department, remaining neutral on the project. Do you have any questions for staff at this time?
Ethan, really quick, I think, so would it be appropriate to require a temporary turnaround on the north side of each one of those streets for fire?
Correct. Fire will require turnarounds at these points here, so at these dead ends.
Okay.
So yes.
Would that need to be, do you think that would need to be put into a condition of approval, or would that just be a fire code thing?
I'd put it in there just to keep everybody familiar with what's expected. I'm all about, making sure everybody understands. No surprises.
Okay.
Anything further?
Thank you, Ethan.
Yep, thanks.
This time we'll have the applicant come up.
Good evening, everyone. Eric Olson, Olson Engineering, 705 South Riverside Harbor Drive, right here in Post Falls. And I'm here representing River City Properties, Howard Rood, as I have been for his other projects in the area. I just thought I'd step back and just give you an update on our progress here. So Ethan touched on some of it, but so Green Meadows subdivision includes this parent parcel, and this parent parcel. That's all well underway. Water, sewer in most of that. And these are our two that we're focusing on the south half right here. So it's kind of a natural progression. We're doing a lot of improvements here this spring on Greens Ferry and Killdeer. And then this project would continue those improvements down Killdeer. As I understand, this parcel right here is referred to as the Hingston properties, recently been annexed, and they'll be moving forward with the subdivision soon, as I understand. So once that's all done, there would be potentially a vehicular connection over to this park ground. I think that's coming up soon, a city park right there. So you'll have that vehicular connection there, as well as the paved pathway. It's interesting to see. I didn't realize this project here down here that Roger introduced is pretty analogous to ours. Kind of same type of thing with improvements to a road that hasn't previously created a lot of traffic. One thing to point out with that, and I know there's concerns from the public about additional traffic. So we'll now have two east-west connections between Greens Ferry, ultimately over to 41. I know that's part of the city's transportation plan, and these roads are spaced out in a way that matches the plans for 41 as well. So I'm prepared to talk more about that if we need to, but I'll leave it at that. You guys have any questions?
Do you have any questions for the applicant?
Do you have any issues with the staff report or potentially the added condition of the turnarounds at the end of those dead-end streets? That might be your question, hypothetically.
No conditions, or no issues with the conditions. I know we had some discussion about providing another east-west connection out of the subdivision, and we've looked at citing that, and we're okay with that as the condition, and also okay with the temporary turnarounds as discussed.
Okay. All right.
Thanks.
Do we we have any public comment?
Sorry, Ray, real quick.
Nope.
The staff would also like to point out that condition 10 in the staff report does talk about the easement turnarounds.
It does. Perfect.
Correct.
Thank you. I missed that. Let's see. Does not look like we have anybody for or neutral. So in opposition, wishing to speak is Ginny Easterly. Please state your name and address for the record, and you've got 4 minutes.
My name is Jenny Easterly, and I live at 2660 East Killdeer Lane. And you guys can see up here on the map, my house is actually going to be the third one in south of Killdeer. And based on their maps that they have provided for you guys as well, the inlets that are coming in off of Killdeer, there's going to be 4 of them. And it is going to be off of every single one of those homes south of Killdeer Lane. And all I've really heard talk about tonight is home values and money, which is really sad because it's not about home values and money. It's about the people that live in these areas. It's really sad because we have got kids and we have families that moved to these areas so we didn't have to deal with the traffic. And now we have money that's coming into the area that is forcing us to deal with traffic. And emergency services, all of our homes have more than ample space for emergency crews or anything like that to be able to turn around and come down and take care of those people if we have emergencies. So that's not ever been a concern or an issue brought up to any emergency crew who's ever come out to our home. I just would really like you to consider putting the inlets in off of Prairie, since development has already happened out off of Prairie, along with putting in stoplights to accommodate the traffic out there in those areas, rather than disrupting those homeowners that are currently living in a small nestled community and allowing this huge traffic flow to come through. I mean, we're looking at like 600 vehicles coming through where we currently have 10 vehicles. And we have no problem maintaining our roads. So that's not going to be a burden that you guys are taking care of for us either. And once again, when it comes to emergency crews, they don't have any problem coming down our roads either because it's not maintained. We oil our roads, we take care of our roads. We don't take any of that money or any of that stuff from the city to come out and take care of that for us currently. So that's not a cost to the city. So I guess bottom line is that I don't want to see these inlets going into this housing development put in off of Killdeer Lane, because this is why we moved there. I am a native to this area. I am born and raised here. And as many other people have communicated and have talked about here, the growth is crazy and not well thought out. And bottom line, as I said before, it's all about money. It's great that you all want to make money and we all want to collect taxes and stuff, but it's just, there's only so much to be built. And the amount of building that's happening is crazy. And it's not well thought out. I'm really sorry, but it's not. None of these housing developments are well thought out. And yes, we will expand beyond what our water needs are and what we can accommodate if we continue to build like this. So I thank you for your time, but I would really, really love if you would think of another route to come in off of Prairie and not come in off of Killdeer Lane for this housing complex. They've already made some adjustments up on Prairie and can accommodate a whole lot more without disrupting a lot of people. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, in opposition and wishing to speak is Jody Mackenzie. please state your name and address for the record. You've got 4 minutes.
Okay. Hello, I'm Jody Mackenzie. I live at 2854 East Killdeer. My husband and I moved there about 2 years ago. When we moved in, we did expect that there would be some developing happening across from us. But I guess I just have some concerns that I just wanted to address. First off, when you look at the development, it doesn't look like there's been any green spaces planned for that. And when you, the first phase, I didn't see any on those plans either. So I'm trying to understand how that fits in. And then it is a pretty high density, and as the earlier speaker had mentioned, comparatively to the community that we're in, you know, a good portion of us have 5-acre lots there, and our homes range anywhere from $400,000 to $600,000 in value. So I have some concern about putting all of those houses in such a small area and what it's going to do potentially to the value of our home. I think that, you know, if anything, they should be larger lots potentially that might fit in well, you know, better with where we're at. Anytime I think too, when you look at the diagram, as Jenny had mentioned, the traffic flow out onto Killdeer, just within that small, I think it's 450 feet or so maybe, there's 4 exits onto Killdeer. And it is accurate. It's almost like somebody planned it. They do line up with our driveways, every exit. So that takes away our privacy almost immediately, because every car coming out of that is looking directly into the front of our homes. So I have some concern with that. I did do, because I'm really kind of all about solutions, so I don't want to just stand up here and complain, but I did do some comparison to some of the other developments in the area. And Fieldstone, I've got some printouts here if you'd like. Fieldstone actually is quite a bit larger, and when you look at the exits that Fieldstone has in comparison to this smaller one, there's much less amount of exits out onto the main roads. Oh, okay. And then also an older development, which is Quail Run, is the same. So you'll see here, I know it's kind of hard to see, but these lots, this right here is the same size as the development that's happening. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 as far as size comparison goes. There's 2 entrances on this side, 2 entrances here, 2 here for future development, and 1 here. So when you look at what is happening with ours, again, comparatively, you see the size. We have 4 entrances on Killdeer, 1 here, 1 here, and 1 here that are proposed. So I guess it just seems, you know, for me, and I don't know a lot about planning and zoning and all of that, but I do know about traffic. And since we've moved in, the amount of people that come barreling down that road thinking that it's goes through, I mean, there's people that come down that road going 50 miles an hour. And we're fortunate because our house does set off the road a little bit. But, you know, I mean, all this is going to do is the traffic's going to be crazy that we're going to see right there. So some of these other developments, you can see the planning of them is such where there's cul-de-sacs and the flow of traffic is they're using roundabouts, some added green space to create the flow so that there's not just all this flood of traffic coming out into one area. So I would just ask that you take a closer look at that. I think these are well planned out developments, and I've got friends who live in them with families, and just the flow of the development, you know, causes traffic to slow down because there's corners, you have to turn, there's only a couple of exits. So I have some concerns about that. And then my last thing is the concern about the roadway in general. So obviously this is going to happen. I just have concern about how much of the roadway is going to encroach on the current properties. So a lot of those homes that are there have trees and bushes and such that have been in there for 30 years. So I just have concern if those are going to have to be taken out to accommodate the roadway, or if the roadway is going to be pushed into the developer's property to allow us to retain those trees, mature trees, and the privacy that they do get.
Okay.
And I think that's it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Would you like these copies?
I think we've got them in the record.
Okay.
You have to submit them.
Thank you.
Yeah. Next in opposition and wishing to speak is Deacon Easterly. Please state your name and address for the record. You've got 4 minutes, sir.
My name's Deacon Easterly. I'm at 2660 East Killdeer Lane. Mr. Kimball, you asked a question about how the road's dead-ended. Can you set this up for me, please? These right here go up and turn around in the second phase of that development. And with all of these driveways going into our driveways, like Jody said, they're looking right into where's our front windows. And with the traffic coming off of Killdeer now, I have a son, I have grandkids. We've already had an assault on me, which law enforcement was called out. I've had people breaking into my stuff already because they think that Killdeer goes all the way through, and they're trying to go to the apartments down on Killdeer Avenue. So they go by and they're seeing everything that we own, and they're coming in and they're assaulting us. I mean, with one access right here onto Prairie, could the engineers not flip that around and put the 4 accesses onto Prairie and 1 onto Killdeer to cut down traffic for us? I maintain the road, I plow it, I maintain it, I oil it. It's a community event. We take care of our road, so the city doesn't have to worry about that. Because all of our concerns are the traffic and the speeding. You can post a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit, but you're going to have people flying up and down the road 60. We've had an officer sitting in my driveway when a pickup truck was doing 72 miles an hour up Killdeer Lane to go up to the R-Grays, slam on the brakes, turn around, and come flying back down when he pulled that gentleman over. It was a 19-year-old kid. If my 14-year-old son or my 6 or 7-year-old grandson was out on the road and got struck by that car, I mean, that's devastating. And we all have kids. Everyone who lives on that road has kids and grandkids. I'm sure you all do too. And when you start putting this many houses and this many driveways and this many people going up and down a small community that we have, I mean, it's going to be a disaster. To put 4 driveways onto Killdeer and 1 onto Prairie, which is, they're already talking about doing 4 lanes all the way down into State Line. I mean, it's already been proposed, it's already going to happen. And it's going to be a nightmare for the people who are living there now. Like my wife said, she's a native, I'm a native. We've seen Post Falls grow. I'm all for Post Falls growing. I'm all for this gentleman putting his houses in. But plan it a little different. Be a little more considerate to the people who are already living there. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Next, in opposition and wishing to speak is Beth and Betty Argraves. I'll have one of you come up at a time. Please state your name and address for the record.
Yes.
And you've got 4 minutes.
Betty Argraves, 2900 East Killdeer Lane, Post Falls, Idaho. And I'm the one at the end of the road. We've lived there, we've built and lived there about 25 years. And, and I'm like everyone else. You don't like to see a lot of houses being built across the road, but, we knew it was coming and the progress. But I am concerned about the 4 roads coming down onto Killdeer Lane. And also a concern is opening up that end of Killdeer going into, it's Killdeer Lane, and the other one is called Killdeer Avenue. When I read what they said about it, I wasn't sure if they switched the lane and avenue when they were talking about what they were going to do. So I wasn't real sure if they were talking about our road or the avenue down below. But I guess the real concern is having the 4 roads coming onto Killdeer Lane. And also, my other concern is if we open up Killdeer Lane to go right into Killdeer Avenue, that's going to be a straight-through shot, and the people coming and very fast speedways. And we see people coming up, zooming up there every day thinking they can come over. My husband left it so that it shows definitely. If they kept going, it'd be 8 foot down. It was a concern for us, so he left kind of a thing to let people know it didn't go through. But it is a concern, and that we are concerned about if they open that up, it's going to be really not good for the community. And we've lived there a lot of years, and I think we should have some say in it, you know. I'm not saying don't build the houses, because that's coming. People have to have a place to live, but I do think we need to consider the traffic and the impact it will have on the people that are living there. Thank you.
Thank you. And next on the same sheet is Beth Argraves in opposition and wishing to speak.
Hi, my name's Beth Argraves. I live at 2900 East Killdeer Lane in Post Falls. And I live in a house next to my parents, so we live 10 acres. And I've researched a lot on this issue, and sorry if I'm nervous getting up and speaking in front of people, so excuse me. But I wrote you guys a letter, and I don't know if all of you read it or not, but traffic is a major issue. I mean, regardless. And when I did the research, the traffic volume increases when it increases in a neighborhood. So does the speed of the vehicle speed, the accident frequency, increased noise, and the increase in crime. And like my mom says, we've been there forever. Well, they bought the land in '79, and so we've been there forever. And my dad helped put Killdeer Lane in, so it was just been. But all of these, with the traffic and everything, will decrease our property value. That's a major thing. And it also decreases our quality of life, which my parents, mind you, are in their late 70s. But it's still, they built that place in order to live out their life. Sorry, I was hoping I would cry. To live out their life, the rest, peacefully and quietly. And with this plan that they have with the 4 roads coming in there, there's no way. They say that on top, with the research that I did, for every family home built, adds 10 vehicle trips per day down the road. And so they have 69 places being built. That's 690 vehicles coming down one little road. Yeah, they have to expand it and everything else, but that's 690 vehicles coming down that road, which right now there's 5 homes that are on that street, and it's quiet. It's well, besides the traffic that comes down there now that thinks it's a go through, that goes straight through. But can you imagine 690 extra traffic? And that's not including the traffic that's going to be coming up Greens Ferry, bypassing Prairie and Greens Ferry on that corner. If they put a through traffic on Killdeer, if they put Killdeer going all the way through, you're going to have a hell of a lot more people, traffic coming through there besides the 690, because people are going to bypass that Greens Ferry and Prairie on that corner there. There's going to be more pollution that's going to be added because of the vehicles. The noise level is going to go up. I mean, we're concerned with our kids, we're concerned with ourselves, with our property, the crime that's going to exceed with putting those roads in. And then our animals that live there, I mean, we never had to put up fences. I mean, we've had 10 acres since '79. We haven't had to put up fences until about a year and a half ago when they started building all those. I mean, I've lived here my whole life. I've grown up here. I've lived here my whole life. I was born in Kellogg, Idaho. I mean, I've seen the changes. I'm 40, well, I'll be 49 tomorrow. You know what I mean? It was a beautiful place to live. Now, and they still say, oh yeah, come to Post Falls because it's a beautiful place to live. You have all these houses. We don't oppose having you guys build all these houses and stuff. That's fine. but do it in a way that it keeps the beauty of when they first came here, you know, when people first wanted to move here. But that's kind of gone, you know? I mean, it's like there's other ways to do it. There's other ways to, I mean, there's so many other ways to put those, instead of putting those roads all on Killdeer, there's so many other solutions than to ruin everybody else that's already been there, their lives, and their livestock, and their quality of life, you know? There's so many other ways to do it.
Wrap
That should be.
wrap it up, please.
Okay, sorry. So I really appreciate you listening to us, you know, and taking into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy birthday.
Seeing no more rebuttal. Mr. Olson.
Okay, Eric Olson again. Appreciate everybody coming out and getting up here and speaking your mind. That's what this is for. I'm going to show a couple of things here. No, I didn't want that whole thing. See if we can get So when we come in as an engineer and as a developer, first thing we have to do when we're looking at a project like this, and a lot of you guys know this, is we have to look and see what's in the city's master plan and look at things like approach spacing, and we wouldn't be allowed to have more than one approach onto Prairie Avenue, just like they're trying to do on 41. They're trying to limit access out onto the bigger arterial roads to reduce congestion and get more people through on those big roads, like Prairie and like 41. So there's studies out there. I reviewed the 41 corridor study today, and it talks about how backage roads and these multiple east-west collector roads help to serve, give people alternative routes to get different places and to reduce the congestion on 41, which obviously hasn't happened yet. But basically, 41 is set up so that you've got major intersections every half mile. In this case, it's going to be, we've got Prairie Avenue here and Bluegrass Avenue here, and they'll allow minor intersections every quarter mile, which will end up being Killdeer Road right here. And that's all the access they'll allow on 41. And they need every access out there in order to serve all the properties in those areas. So this type of thing has been planned for. Killdeer Road is a public right-of-way, and it has been for a long time. So basically, we're following through and building this in accordance with a lot of the plans that have been worked on and adopted. As far as having the 4 approaches, you might notice that the project before us, which is basically the same acreage, had 5. We've got 4. The approach spacing is 290 feet, and the minimum in Post Falls for approaches on a collector road is 250 feet. Touching on a couple of the other items. We do have, these are decent sized lots. They're all about a fifth of an acre, roughly 9,000 to 10,000 feet, square feet, whereas the minimum in an R1 is 5,500. We would have liked to have done a couple of cul-de-sacs, but people in the engineering department, fire district Water district, they don't like cul-de-sacs. Basically, they're looking for connectivity, looping water mains, ease of access for public safety. So that's comment on that. As far as what's going to happen on Killdeer, we're required to improve the north side plus 10 feet. Willing to do whatever we can to save any bushes and trees that we can. We are planning to excavate for a water main in that area, but coming up here fairly soon. But that road isn't widening towards you guys, it is widening towards us. So that's all I've got for, unless you have more questions.
Any more questions for the applicant? Seeing none? Thank you, sir. Before we close the public hearing, do we have any questions for staff?
I do, maybe, and it kind of just touches on both the first and second project with the street improvements. I'm assuming there'll be posted speed limit signs and then potentially a lot more police to maintain that speed limit.
Mr. Paulus.
Commissioner Bishop, members of the commission, Robert Paulus, Assistant City Engineer. We have heard the comments that were made, and we do not anticipate, in this case, Killdeer Avenue, or in the previous public hearing, Hope Avenue, to be high-speed roadways. Now, from an engineer standpoint, a high-speed roadway may be different than the general public. In the particular case we have before us, Killdeer Avenue, we are anticipating that it is going to be posted at a 25-mile-per-hour roadway. There are some things that can be done, and we can work with the developer during the design process to put some attributes in that roadway to help keep it more along the 25 and not necessarily be a visual wide-open corridor. Something to take into consideration, the future intersection of Killdeer Avenue with Cecil Road will be stop controlled. We anticipate that Killdeer Avenue will be the stop road, not Cecil Road. And then Killdeer again will be stop controlled a quarter mile further to the east at Charleville Road. And then when Killdeer reaches State Highway 41, that will be a restricted access point, meaning that people can make right turns onto Highway 41, right turns from Highway 41 onto Killdeer, or left turns from Highway 41 to Killdeer. But through movements and left turns from Killdeer onto 41 will be prohibited. That should help with keeping traffic that is not necessarily in that area or has a direct purpose to go out either to the park or to Highway 41 and then head south. Traffic that's making more of a regional trip would be more interested in being on Prairie Avenue, which is going to be a 45-mile-per-hour roadway. It will have a traffic signal at Greens Ferry and Prairie Avenue. That will be installed and put into operation in the spring of 2020 or within the next few months by the Post Falls Highway District. And then you have the improvements to Highway 41 coming up over the next 2 to 3 years by the Idaho Transportation Department. Does that sufficiently answer your question, Commissioner Bishop?
Thank you.
Okay. Any other traffic questions?
Anything else for staff? Mr. Paulus in particular? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Paulus.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for staff before we close this?
I'm going to ask just, I don't know who needs to answer this. When the developer, the engineer referred to that the city doesn't want, or the highway or whatever, doesn't want cul-de-sacs put in developments, how is that stated? I mean,
they're highly discouraged. The only time that they're really permitted is when there's like topographical constraints, like there's something dealing with the terrain or the topography that it makes it feasibly inviable. But for the most part, it's not mostly not permitted.
okay, if you look, do you have these maps?
Not off the cuff, but
And why,
the
can
plat
you
map.
explain why they're discouraged, Mr. Manley?
most of the reason why they're discouraged is because one is maintenance of the cul-de-sacs for the streets department, especially during snow
Okay.
activities. It becomes very laborious. And also just, that's basically the main reason. I can have, potentially Paulus might be able to further explain.
Well, so it wouldn't be feasible for them to have, instead of having 4 lanes or 4 streets coming out, have a couple or at least one be like the street at the top where it's a loop. It's not a, you know, it's up farther in the top part of the map.
Yeah, do we have phase 1 and the future piece? So you were thinking that on the southern portion, for them to have loops as well and
Something
reduce
like
their
that, whether redesigned to do that rather than, I don't know. I'm just trying to compromise here somewhere.
That is an element that the access point where you have the access to Prairie Avenue to the north, all the ways down to Killdeer. That one there, we would definitely want to see and keep in place.
Yeah.
When you look at the development of a subdivision, we generally want to see connectivity between adjoining lots. How many access points are the right number of access points onto Killdeer Avenue? We fall back and we have a minimum spacing of roads, which, as Mr. Olson pointed out, is 250 feet, and he said that these are about 290, and that is, you know, what's there. We do not set up and say that there's a maximum spacing, and there's some ability for them, at being the property owners, to lay out a design and say, this is what we want to put on here. Staff then takes a look and says, does it meet the minimum requirements? Does it provide access to adjoining properties to allow for additional development? Or are there cul-de-sacs that staff may say, no, we think that those need to go away? Or are there, in some cases, cul-de-sacs that can remain because there isn't a design alternative to work around it? There's a little bit of give and take when it comes to where the accesses are and how many there are going to be. You know, additional accesses onto Prairie Avenue. We do have a critical arterials corridor policy which was put together within the last year by the Kootenai Metropolitan Planning Organization, and that was worked on collaboratively with the City of Post Falls, City of Coeur d'Alene, all the local jurisdictions and highway districts. And that limits the amount of access points that can go on to Prairie Avenue because we're trying to preserve capacity so that people utilize that road to move around regionally in a safe manner without people trying to bypass and find alternate routes on more local streets. Killdeer Avenue is one of those that falls into a minor collector standard, and that's intended to have between 1,000 to 5,000 cars per day on it. I can't tell you what the model is anticipating. From what I've seen here, yeah, probably in the 2,000 to 3,000 vehicle trips per day would be a reasonable assumption. A very big change in the traffic dynamics in that area for the people.
Aren't there also safety concerns, Mr. Paulos, like for the fire department, how long you can have it on a dead-end street and things like that?
Well, we have dead-end street requirements of 800 feet is the maximum, and that is so that emergency services can get in there, and if there is an emergency, that you're not keeping a large number of people from being able to get out of the neighborhood in the event of an emergency. One other thing to keep in mind, you heard some comments this evening about long dead-end roadways today where people come flying down them, realize that they're dead-end, even though they're marked on the end at the public roadway that they're dead-end road. They then whip around and then fly out even faster. There is some literature that talks about cul-de-sacs, and that too many cul-de-sacs, you do tend to find that the general public likes to think that they are a safe place to have their homes and that kids can go out there and play in the street, play basketball and such, but there does tend to be a higher incidence rates of people going down those roads realizing that, oh, it's a dead end. They whip around and there's a higher risk to people because people do tend to play in the ends of cul-de-sacs. We don't recommend anyone play in the roadways, but it does happen.
So it wouldn't be feasible to make a couple of those dead ends then, is that what you're saying?
I would
Rather than
not,
throughs?
the city code would not support those being dead ends.
Okay.
If they
thank you.
wanted to be loops, that would be something that the developer would need to propose, and that would be an alternate design. On its own merits, it meets the minimum standards of the city of Post Falls for access.
Okay, thank you.
Isn't 7 access points quite excessive for a subdivision of that size? I mean, I haven't, just from what I've seen come across, that seems to be a lot.
Now, regardless of the number of access points you have onto Killdeer, the traffic, if it's heading southerly, is probably going to want to come down to Killdeer anyway. And so whether you have it in one location or 4 locations, you're still going to be funneling the same proportion of traffic which wants to use Killdeer to head east or west is still going to come down that point. Now you're going to focus all that traffic into one intersection, and that could create problems at that intersection from a safety standpoint. Usually the more access points you have, the more you're distributing that traffic, and you allow for those intersections to work more smoothly. Now, Killdeer Avenue itself right now is east-west only. As time goes on, some of these other homes may decide to take their 5 and 10 acre parcels and redevelop them. As that occurs, we're going to see more roads which head north-south as well, and add alternate routes for people to head north-south or to head to other locations.
So you don't find that excessive?
I do not
Okay.
find that excessive.
Okay.
Long-winded answer, sorry about that.
Okay, no, that's all right. That's all right.
Do we have any more questions for staff?
Thank you, Mr. Paulus.
You're welcome.
Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing and open it up for discussion.
Well, I will say that I think it's obviously already zoned in the city as R1. It is, the lots are within the, they're within the scope of the R1. They're not huge, but it could be a little smaller. My biggest concern is with those 4 access points. I think 7 access points into the subdivision is a lot, but 4 in such a small little section, to me, seems excessive. And it seems like there are so many access points, in part possibly just to create more lots. There's not as much interior going on. They're just creating a lot of, as many lots as possible. So I think that this subdivision, as far as its density, it's where it should be. It's where it can be, but I do take issue with that many access points onto Killdeer.
Okay. Any other commissioner comments?
I do, and maybe this is something I lean on you as our expert engineer on, and I guess to tie on to what Nancy was mentioning is that if we could maybe have the middle 2 lanes, but have these 2 come in maybe where that second row of lots is, to go left or right on the left side, left on the right side to tie in and then enter out, just to eliminate 2 of those, the outside access points. I don't know, what do you think about that as far as to eliminate some of the negative impact that it might have on those homeowners on the other side?
So this is a little bit, my feelings on it are, or my thoughts anyway, are that it's kind of a sticky situation. So as near as I can tell, and from what staff says, is that it meets all the criteria of the subdivision ordinance. And so from that standpoint, it's provable. trying to redesign it in a public hearing is probably the absolute worst place to do it. But my understanding is that they do have some changes that they have to make to produce a connective street out to the east. And although I don't think there's any part of the code that says we can make them change their accesses that meets the access requirements, I certainly do think that if they were to reduce the access points, that as a commissioner, as long as they're not changing the lot count, it all meets the requirements of the subdivision code, that I would not consider it a substantial change. And so if they were to do that later, and deal with that on a staff level, I wouldn't see that as something that would be a significant change that I would change the decision criteria, I guess. But I mean, as it sits, it's just like every part of the grid of the city of Post Falls. If you look at the older part that was built in the 70s, it's just a bunch of grid streets, and this is very, very similar to that. So I mean, there's a lot of Post Falls that's like that. Not a lot of the newer parts, but it does appear to meet all the criteria. So I don't know how we could force them to make a change and it be legally binding.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that. I feel
standard 3, right? Is pretty much where the focus is. Of the 6 standards, standard 3 is that the proposed streets are consistent. In order to gain approval, you would have to find as a body that the proposed streets are consistent with the transportation element of the comprehensive plan. And just to kind of parrot back what you said, sitting Chairman Kimball, the streets are consistent with the transportation element, and you as a body some of you not agree with the layout of the subdivision, but that doesn't mean it doesn't meet the standards necessarily. And so in order to deny it, you would have to make findings of fact and deliberate and reach consensus that this isn't consistent with the comprehensive plan, and I haven't heard testimony on that this evening, so you'd want to make sure to draw that out before you reach that decision.
Yes, that's kind of where I was going with that, is that it appears to meet all the standards, and my personal preference is whether I like it or not, or I think it's the best layout or not. That's not for me to decide.
That's not one of the 6 standards.
It's not one of the, my opinion on whether I like it or not is not a 6 standard. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah, I agree with what you said, Ray. Exactly, actually. I wish that the lots were a little larger, and I wish that there was 1 or 2 access points there, but that's not going to, I think the biggest thing is there's the headlight issue onto the neighbors' lots, but that's not going to reduce the traffic count by throttling everyone into one opening, and the poor neighbor where there's the one opening is going to get the worst headlights, maybe. I don't know. Maybe it's aligned just right, but it's hard. Those are wish list things, and that's not something that we can dictate up here. So other than that, I agree. I think it does meet the all of the requirements. So.
Vicky Joe, have anything to add?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
No.
I'd look for a motion. Not everyone jump at once.
I'll give it a shot here if I get to the right spot. I'll move to approve the Green Meadows East Subdivision SUBD-00020-2019, meaning that it meets the requirements of the ordinance. Items 1 through 11 as presented.
Items 1 through 11 are conditions, I believe.
I'm sorry.
Standards are 1 through 6.
Okay, there you go. Meeting the standards. of 1 through 6. Did I say that right? And conditions 1 through 11. And correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I think you're correct that you are finding, your motion is that it meets the 6 standards with the staff recommended conditions 1 through 11. I would just request clarification based upon Mr. Kimball's earlier comment about, wait, the turnarounds were on the other one. Never mind. What you got?
It's okay. I think condition 11 handles turnarounds, I believe.
10, I think is what it is.
10,
Yep.
10,
Yeah.
10 does.
So we don't need another one, I
Okay.
think. All right.
We've got a motion on the table. Is there a second?
Can you second it?
I will second the motion. We've got a motion and a second. Can I get a roll call, please?
Bishop,
No.
Latham,
Yes.
Hampi,
No.
Kimball,
Yes.
Carrie,
No.
Okay. And that brings us to,
Well, you have a motion
Oh, yeah.
to
Oh,
approve
that's right.
that failed.
We
You
have-
don't have a motion to
okay,
deny.
That's right. Thank you. Thank you. Do we have any other motions?
I will move to not approve Green Meadows East Subdivision SUBD -0020-2019, finding that it does not meet the approval criteria as outlined in the Post Falls Municipal Code. And that's it.
Do we
You're gonna
need
need more than that.
specific on the?
What doesn't it meet? And how does it not meet it? Not to put you on the spot, but in order to.
Oh, really?
just-
Not to put me on
not
the
at all.
spot? Is that-
That the applicant has a right to know has it met these standards, and if not, how.
Number 6, I need to go back to him. Number 6, I believe.
That's number 3.
Okay, no, I'm sorry, number 3. The proposed streets are consistent with the transportation element of the comprehensive plan, and the staff said that the subdivision and proposed layout accommodate connectivity and will not have a negative impact on the local transportation system. I do not agree with that.
And so, why? That's,
Because I believe that it's going to negatively impact all the neighbors on Kildare having 4 access points that close together.
okay, that's what I need. And the rest of the standards, you feel it meets?
The rest of the
other
standards
five?
are okay.
I second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Can I get a roll call, please?
Hampi,
Yes.
Bishop,
Yes.
Latham,
No.
Kimball,
No.
Carrie,
Yes.
Okay. On to item C. We'll open the public hearing for short green special use permit file USE-007-2019. Manley.
I'm going to stop you because I forgot to do something after the denial. So after denial, Idaho law requires that if you deny an application, you have to give them advice what actions, if any, they can take to gain approval. And so as a follow-up to the denial, what actions would be the recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Commission, or the requirement, I guess, since you're the decision makers? What actions can the applicant take to gain approval for this subdivision?
I just believe just limiting the amount of access points onto Killdeer.
Is there a specific number that you think would be appropriate?
I think 2 would be appropriate.
Okay.
Same.
Okay. Is that adequate?
That helps, thank you.
Okay. And now on to short green special use permit.
That would be 5 on that one, correct? So same.
Good evening, John Manley, Planning Manager of the City of Post Falls, introducing the special use permit for the short green project, case file USC 2, 2019. The owner and applicant and is present this evening is Shane Anderson, representing the Short Green LLC. What he's requesting is the approval for a special use permit to construct multifamily housing within a community commercial service zoning district per the R3 high-density multifamily zoning district standards on approximately 0.9 acres. So looking at this, you can see that in city code, this is what it states, is that high-density multifamily may be permitted within that CCS zoning district by a special use permit, such that it will not compromise present uses. The location of this is, as you see here, just a little bit east of, or northeast corner of Horsehaven and Highway 41. You see here in the hatched boxed area. So with this, if it was approved, you could permit up to 16 units on 0.9 acres at approximately 17.8 dwelling units per acre. This is just a little less than what's allowed by the R3, the 18 dwelling units per acre. So the proposal would be consistent with what may be allowable with the CCS zoning district. Water provider for this area would be the Ross Point Water District, with the City of Post Falls providing the sanitary sewer facilities. What you see here is the proposed layout. It's a little rudimentary, but it still gets the request across. You see here that the intent at this point is to create 4 lots, individual lots, and of which would have some fourplexes on there and potentially a duplex. There is some flexibility if it was approved as is being requested to do consistent with the multifamily R3. You may or may not need to plat to do the development on this, but you could do multifamily up to 16 units, and you can see that stated here as part of their request and exhibit. Looking at the zoning, you can see it here. It's all zoned red for commercial. The future land use designation for this in the red is all commercial. Also, you can see to the east that yellow being more of that residential designation for development, future development. Kind of went over the comp plan already. Current land use, mostly some large lot, undeveloped land, or some single family homes. There's an existing single family home on the site. To the directly west, you do have the Ross Point Water. They have a site there. So when looking at the special use permit request, we look at the criteria for this and to help guide the direction of that special use permit. So first one is implementation of the special use will or will not conform to the purposes of the applicable zoning district. Here you see that CCS zone is to support a wide array of retail service uses, including some manufacturing, technical, and other professional uses, as well as multifamily residential uses. So hence, this is where it dovetails into that special use permit being allowed within that CCS. Multifamily development is generally 2 or 3 stories in height, and is typically clustered in a way that helps kind of mitigate or buffer some potential effects on some neighborhoods at lower densities and impacts to the area. This could potentially occur to the east. You saw that yellow being delineated on the future land uses. So with some taller structures or some more intense development along Highway 41, the effects of the corridor and some of that's future impacts on 41 could help mitigate noise, especially in light, on to the neighborhoods to the east. Looking at the review criteria, additionally, you see here that as part of the site plan, we would deal with parking. We have parking requirements of 2 parking stalls for each 2-bedroom unit or 1.5 parking stalls for each 1-bedroom unit. Kind of gone over that already. Second criteria here deals with is it allowed in the code? And here's that section of the code, 1820, that lists multifamily and the allowance in the land use table and being allowed through a special use permit. Third one is whether the proposed use will or will not be compatible with the health, safety, and welfare of the public or the land uses in the vicinity. It was found to have no noxious characteristics on the health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhoods or the transportation network nearby. And you can see this stated here. Additionally, it's not anticipated to produce impacts that would affect the overall network. Did want to cite, though, that it is close to the I-90 interchange. Highway 41 connects directly to this site, so you have easy access to the site. Fire protection, generally speaking, for multifamily development, their input is addressed at the site plan review. It was routed. They didn't comment to have any concerns with the proposal. The last one is a look at the comprehensive plan. Will or will not comply with the goals and policies found within the comprehensive plan. So I'll go through some residential policies and then some overall policies. Here you can see most ordinary activities should occur within walking distance of most residences to allow for some measure of independence. You have a commercial corridor along 41. With the 41 widening, you will get some multi-use paths on the east side with the development, and then with site plans along the west side, you get a multi-use path. So you would provide some opportunities for development, residential in nature in the vicinity of 41 to have a walkability to do their commerce or places of employment. A range of housing types and price levels are also encouraged to support diverse ages and incomes for affordable housing. What you look at, a lot of times you see in Post Falls currently, you see multifamily projects, large complexes, you see single-family development. We haven't had a whole lot in recent times of some more smaller lot multifamily product. We've talked before about some missing middle type housing product. This would provide an opportunity on a smaller scale to provide some multifamily to address maybe some of that missing middle housing product. Here it just talks about multifamily should have access to arterial and collector streets to serve buffers between commercial and industrial at lower density single family homes. It kind of goes back into some of the guiding policies that has already been presented. Also, it encourages infill development, compatible infill development. This would be considered infill development at this location and would be compatible with other commercial uses and potential residential uses that may exist. Now we're going to go into some overall policies. Neighborhoods and centers should be compact, pedestrian, and mixed use when possible. Now when you're dealing with a large product, 5, 10, 20, easier it is to get mixed uses in one proposal, being that this is 0.9 acres, and you will see that in places along 41. This kind of alludes to the fact that overall you should get some mixing uses through a corridor, so you could extract that this could potentially lead to them meeting this policy. Encourage balances of land use and Post Falls remain a desirable, stable, and sustainable community. One of those issues that Post Falls is facing is affordability. And we have low vacancy rates in both the single family and multifamily product. As those vacancy rates maintain at a low state, prices just keep going up. So this could potentially address, and although there's only 16 units, add to addressing this issue that Post Falls currently has. We're back to infill development, encouraging it. Policy 10 of the overall policies, I've already stated that it would be considered infill. There were some proposed conditions with this proposal. and that's dedicating the rights-of-way and easement conforming to the minor collector roadway and easement as part of subdivision process. Would like to add that we still would seek this if for some reason they wanted to do a 16-plex, would still want to get it as part of the site plan review process too. Roadway frontage improvements conforming with the minor collector roadway, including 10-foot multi-use trail, will be required as part of subdivision process. Once again, this would also be sought of if for some reason they wanted to go through a site plan review process.
Should those conditions, not, since we're not looking at a subdivision day, but a special use permit, be part of the site plan process instead of subdivision?
There's an allowance within the special, a set of additional conditions that you can add above and beyond a normal, what would be normally found within the zoning code. There's like, I believe 7 sets, so we could condition this accordingly at this time.
Because it's a special use, it's not an outright allowed use, and so the law allows for certain uses in certain special situations, special use permits, whereby you condition them so that they can still meet the standards of the underlying zoning while allowing a use that wouldn't normally be permitted outright. So you get to make it fit within the standard that it's not outright allowed for.
I think I didn't state my question very well then. We're not looking at a subdivision, so should it say subdivision or special use permit?
It should say special use permit, I'm sorry. Oh,
so we good?
Number 1, got it.
Number 1 and number 2. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, because if they're going to, currently it's 1 lot, so if they want to go as a,
If we approved a special use permit and they didn't do a subdivision, they could still do multifamily on it and not split it. That's my point, I guess.
right.
But they'd still need to dedicate the right-of-way. So it shouldn't be conditioned upon as part of the subdivision. It should be as part of the special use permit.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Because they're requesting a special use permit right now.
Then the third one, site access points will be required to conform with city access management requirements. These are the agencies that were routed. Post Falls Police commented were neutral. Kootenai County Fire was neutral, and Kootenai County Community Development was neutral as well.
Okay.
I'd stand for any questions you have for staff at this point.
What's located just south of it, of this? I'm trying to visualize in my
I
mind.
believe that's the garbage collection. I'll go.
No,
No.
it's
No?
the building center. It used to be, or
building
it's
spot.
the lumber. Lumber's.
Okay,
It was the lumber
okay,
place.
yeah. I was just trying to visualize in my,
Yeah, I apologize for that. Usually I have slides that can depict the.
John, I
region
noticed
better.
in the project description, it has 14 units. Would it be limited to that, or could they actually build more?
Well, what they're requesting is they build it per the R3 design. So you would allow up to 18 dwelling units per acre in the R3.
Okay.
So ideally, the way the initial is the duplex and 3 fourplexes, but as requested, they potentially could do 2 eightplexes if they needed to.
Okay.
So I might be, I might be bringing this back up again, but if that's, this conditional use permit is not contingent on if those lots are split into 4s or if they're 1 lot. Because if they're split into 4s, then the dwelling units per acre changes and the parking requirements and all of that stuff. But it doesn't matter. This special use permit is for that current chunk of land. That current
Yeah, we
parcel,
can't
whether it's subdivided
plant
or not.
lots that would create nonconformity.
Right.
So when we went through the subdivision process, we would have to make sure that if they were doing a fourplex, they couldn't exceed the 18 dwelling units per acre for that lot as a standalone lot.
Okay, gotcha. So it has to follow whether it's split or not split, but the special use permit is for all of the land, whether it's split into 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever lots.
Right, and I can't, the code requires 18 dwelling units per, so there's no way to exceed the density
Right.
within any given lot unless there's other processes like PUDs and what, that you can go ahead and do that.
And this would go through a minor subdivision the way they're planning it, which wouldn't require it to come back before us if it's a minor subdivision, is that right?
Correct. We would then compare it against city code and do an administrative review.
Gotcha.
And then if they could meet what the requirements were with code, then we can proceed with the plat application process and then.
Okay. And the threshold for minor and major is 4 or 5 lots?
It's 4 lots such that there's no new roads.
Okay. Oh, yes, that's right, fronting on a current road. Okay. Gotcha.
Are there any more questions for staff?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Manley. This time we'll have the applicant come up and make a presentation. Please state your name and address for the record, and you've got 15 minutes.
Shane Anderson, 404 West Montgomery, Post Falls. Thank you for your time, Commissioners, Chairman. So it is what it is. The biggest thing is it's been used for residential purposes. It was always been residential purposes. The city annexed it, and by then, now it's somewhat of a white elephant. It's being used for residential, but it's a commercial zoned property, and it's single-family residential, so it's non-conforming due to by annexation. And it really, I purchased it from an older lady, and I wish she'd have been able to be here, right? Because it put her in a bit of a scenario of what should I do with this? And it went kind of around, and nobody really well, there's a lot of different ways you can utilize the property. So my biggest request is I would like to have the existing parcel, which is being used for single-family residential, as a rental. I put it on the market, and I had 16 people want to rent it. It's high demand, but it's currently non-conforming because it's single-family residential and commercial. Is that correct?
That would be correct.
Yeah, so it's non-conforming currently. I want it conforming. Special use permit does that. Plain and simple. But it's high density because that's what is allowed in that code. Yeah? That's basically.
That'd be correct.
Yeah. The question I have, engineering, it was a 10-foot, what is that? What was it?
The multi-use path?
Yeah. Walk me through what that looks like versus a sidewalk, swale sidewalk.
Can we have Paul's come up and?
Sure. Maybe.
Mr. Paulus.
Go ahead. Okay. And I asked just because it puts it really close to the front door of the current house, which has substantial value for the use of what this special use is. So a sidewalk versus a 10-foot, that's a lot of real estate, considering the adjacent parcel is a well, and it's not going to be moving. But that was good.
So on the Robert Paul's Assistant City Engineer, up on the board you have the typical cross-section for a minor collector roadway, which is what Horsehaven Avenue is. It's 80 feet of right-of-way, and the design on the right side of the cross-section as you look at it shows a 10-foot swale and then a 5-foot sidewalk. The left side of the cross-section is what we are asking, which shows a 10-foot multi-use trail in that area, and then we require a 15-foot easement. A portion of that trail would be in the easement. One thing that could be looked at during the design phase to help reduce and keep more of that more of that trail in the right-of-way and not in the easement would be to look at, instead of a 10-foot swale, to go with a 6-foot planter strip for the trees. But then the proponent would need to look at how to handle the stormwater in an easement on site. It's something that would have to be worked out into the design level. I don't know the practicality as to how that impacts the rest of what they have proposed, but that is a design element that could be worked at, because the road itself doesn't change. It's just where you put that 10-foot path and how to make it work within the other design elements, requirements of the city.
Okay.
Does that help?
I think it's something to be figured out later when you get to site plan.
Yeah. I think so, yeah. It's a lot of.
Please come up to them.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we'll address that in the engineering design phase.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's it, best. Thank you.
Have anything else for us, sir?
Thank you for your time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do you have any public comments? Okay. Okay. In opposition, not wishing to speak, is Roland Hooley? Hool? Hool. God, I'm butchering them tonight. And it said, road too busy now, more traffic will destroy our residential area even more. And in opposition, wishing to speak is Vicky Hool. Ms. Hool, you have, please state your name and address for the record. You've got 4
Vicky
minutes.
Hool, East 4261 Horsehaven, which is just down the road from where this is at, and we've lived there since 1984. Know the whole history of Anna Kleinschmidt losing her husband and putting annexation and a $60,000 fee on that property for sewer hookup, which she could not afford to pay, so she was put into that situation. That's just going for the history. Sorry. Anyway, the East Horsehaven right now is a dead-end road. We have a church on that road, at the end of the road. We have 4, 5 other properties past that dead-end road, which was supposed to be using St. Anthony's Lane as their access point. They do not. They use Horsehaven. The commercial right there, Source One Build, actually has a lot of customers going in and out. Going in and out of that road is a nightmare. Getting on Highway 41 is 5-minute wait sometimes. You have people backed up already on that road trying to get out. You're going to put 2 cars per residence trying to get out of that road. They're only going to be able to turn right as they get out of that road after the development of Highway 41 improvement goes. We are going to have a quagmire there. It is a dead-end road. You have to four-wheel it to get out of the other side off the St. Anthony's Lane. You keep accessing more people without the infrastructure to able to get in and out of that property. We do have a turnaround at the end for the fire department, which comes down there regularly, a police department, which comes down there regularly, due to an incident past that turnaround. But it is just really putting a greater and greater demand on a road, trying to get people in and out at a time frame when they're going to work and trying to come home to work. I've seen that road blocked many times by the business semis going in and out. The garbage company uses that road as an access road to take their trucks in and out. It is just, right there is just a big bottleneck. And also, you're putting more and more, and I keep wanting to raise my hand and ask questions, more and more people are coming in, more and more families, lots of children. The impact on the schools on this development is huge, and you guys don't I don't hear anything saying with all these developments, all these young families coming in, all these kids coming to the schools, what kind of impact those are having to the schools. We have to build new schools. Every 2 years, there seems to be a new school popping up in Post Falls because of the impact of all the new children we have. Understand children need education, but the cost to the property owners is huge. On the big subdivisions, developers have to put some money into it. I don't see it on these little properties coming in where they add a whole bunch of money to our educational system. So it is a big problem. So anyway, I wish to deny, we don't even know what's going to be built there other than, all right, we can put whatever we want in there. And I think that's wrong. I've just lived down the road. We've had problems with, unless you could guarantee that he puts a fence around there, that the dogs and the kids don't run through all the fields, and we have livestock also. We've had killed by different animals coming down from different people. So anyway, I have and I'm a realtor, so I really like growth, understand that, but it has to be done well and not an eyesore. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Rebuttal, sir. Applicants, would you like to do any rebuttal?
I'll be real brief. It's commercial. The impact of people wanting to get in and out with the capacity, maximizing this for commercial versus residential, it's far more conforming to residential than it is commercial. That's it.
Okay. Have any questions for the applicant before we close the public hearing? Any questions for staff? Okay. Close the public hearing and open it up to comment. Mr. Latham, everything?
I'm first.
Let's go for
Not a lot of comments. At first when I looked at this, I thought residential next to 2 lumber yards, that doesn't seem like a very good fit outright. But yet at the same time, it's working with an existing home. There's a single family residence there, and it could be all kinds of commercial, retail, office, anything like that, and that's allowed outright. So after looking at it and kind of hearing some of the details, I think it does make a bit more sense than when I first looked at it.
Okay. Vicky Jo, any thoughts?
I agree, I do like that it'd be a little bit different. It's not apartments going in or a big commercial thing right there.
Okay. Sam?
I'm a big advocate of commercial along 41, so if you want to put a Chick-fil-A in there, that'd be great. But as far as this goes, this is a great project. Again, like John had mentioned, it fits that. It's a good buffer between what will be commercial right on 41 and what will be residential to the east of it. So I'm all for it.
Okay, Nancy?
I
Thoughts?
can agree with the buffer part of it. That actually kind of makes sense there. And I don't mind the density. I am in agreement that getting out on Highway 41 from any of those roads anymore has gotten dangerous, in my opinion, dangerous. And we need that improvement on Highway 41, and it doesn't really look like that's going to be on schedule either now. So I have a concern with that. But at this project, as it stands, I think it's probably a good fit.
Okay. And I agree a lot with what Mark said with regards to traffic, and if it's a commercial site or an office, it's going to generate just as much traffic as it would for some 16 units. And it works really well as a buffer. It's may not be very well suited for commercial, just because it's right next. It does have the exposure from the corner. So I think I think it meets the criteria for a special use permit.
I just have a question. Is there any future plans for maybe a light at Horsehaven? Is that not a?
My understanding is that there's no light at Horsehaven. It'll be a 3/4 movement, but what will happen, there is a 1/4 mile and a 1/8 mile backage road, which will parallel Highway 41, that are supposed to take traffic for these areas and relieve the north-south, get people going north and south, kind of, and over to up to pole line, down to 16th, where there will be a traffic signal. So that's in our transportation master plan. It is what it is, big map. So I'll look for unless there's any more comments, I'll look for a motion.
Okay. I move to approve the short green special use permit. Doesn't have a number, does it? Okay. Subject to conditions 1 through 3, with the word verbiage change on 1 and 2 to be special use permit rather than subdivision process.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Latham?
Yes.
Campy?
Yes.
Kimball?
Yes.
Carey?
Yes.
Bishop?
Yes.
Okay. On to item D. How about we take about a 10-minute break?
Yeah.
So we're going to adjourn for 10 minutes and a little bit of water, something like that. Be back in 10.
Thanks, Ray.
From our 10-minute recess. And we will open the Wildflower Meadows Zone Change File RNZE 0002-2019.
Mr. Manley to present.
Just digging up the PowerPoint.
Take your time.
15 minutes.
So the Wildflower Zone Change, owners are Stephen Cassell and Deanna Hubert. The applicant is Ace Solutions LLC on their behalf. They're requesting a change from the current single-family residential R1 zoning district to the medium-density R2 zoning district. So you're going to be asked to review this and do a recommendation of the proposed zoning to City Council. You can see this location right here in the red hatched box, the southwest corner of Midway and McGuire. Also, you can see that just to the east, you have some multifamily on the east side of McGuire. You have an LDS church, and then you can see the transition to other single-family product in the Montrose PUD development area. The requested size for this is approximately 8.63 acres. The current land use is large lot, single family. The water provider would be East Green Acres, with the city of Post Falls providing sewer. So when looking at the request, we have a series of review criteria. There's 6 review criteria. This one here, I kind of sum it all up because it kind of just encapsulates it all up, and they're kind of together right on it. First one is it consistent with the future land use map? Is it consistent with goals and policies found in the comp plan? Street classifications, traffic patterns, existing development, future land uses, community plans, and geographic natural features. At this specific site, there is no real community plans or natural features that's worth mentioning that could affect the proposal. Going into the future land use, you see here that it's designated as residential. Their proposal would be consistent with that future land use map, but our residential designation is consistent for all residential proposals. Looking at surrounding zoning, you see currently that to the northeast we have the R1 zoning district, but note this is within a PUD. So when you see to the east, you see some additional single-family homes that's currently zoned industrial, but those are single-family homes. And then you see that multifamily project in the industrial zoning district as well, just to the east. With the site on the west side, currently they're zoned R1 single-family. Looking at the transportation network, you've got McGuire, which is a minor arterial, and then you have the collector of Midway. So this would be compatible at the medium density with both those transportation road classifications. Nothing was cited in the staff report as adversely affecting the transportation network or the proposed streets. Commercial and high-density residential zoning is typically assigned along with higher road classifications, and this is what this would be on this criteria. The fourth one is a higher road classification and a proposed medium density, actually. The next one deals with the neighborhood commercial and low-density residential. It's typically assigned further away from higher intense urban activity. This proposal, although it's medium density, you see it zoned R1. Currently, right now, you may or may not think McGuire Road is heavily traveled, but being a minor arterial, will have more, as far as the transportation effects, be more urban in nature as time goes on than currently is today's date. The last one is industrial zoning, and they're not proposing it, so that really wouldn't be applicable. Looking at who was notified, here's the notification list. We did receive from the police department. They were neutral on the proposal. I'd stand for any question you have for staff regarding this at this point in time.
Questions for staff?
I don't have any right now.
Okay. Okay. Seeing none?
Right.
Will the applicant come up? Please state your name and record for the or name and address for the record?
I'm Steve Castle.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. 2518 West Midway Avenue. I'm co-owner. I think a lot of the discussions that have gone on tonight are about R1 and single family, as well as some apartments. What we're kind of proposing is that we've got a medium density housing possibly developing in that area, which will allow for duplexes, townhouses, and that type of thing. There are not a lot of those going on in Post Falls right now, and I think it's going to help to fill a void or fill a need for younger families, younger people who are looking to be able to rent someplace reasonably and then be able to ultimately afford a single-family residence. I say that because I have personal experience with that. For 8 years, from 2008 to 2016, I lived down in Caldwell, which is a city approximately about the same size as Post Falls. And I lived in a development that had duplexes in there. And those duplexes, most of the residents were young families or young couples with or without families. And they'd come in there and they'd live for 2 or 3 years until they could kind of build up some money where they could afford single-family residences. There was another section, and those were mostly 2-level duplexes. There was another section right next to it that was single-level, and those were primarily for seniors because they couldn't go up and down steps as easily. And that provided them with an affordable housing for those seniors too. So what we're looking at here is to try to fill a niche in between the R1s and the R3s apartments. Right next door, of course, the Montrose project is expanding, and those are all single-family R1s. So I think with this R2 designation, we'll be able to provide opportunities for young families, single people, as well as some senior housing in there. That's pretty much all I have.
Thank you.
Okay. Do you have any questions for the applicant?
No.
None. All right. Thank you, sir. Public testimony. Do we have any?
We have none.
We have no public testimony tonight, so I'm assuming there's no need for any rebuttal. Before we close public hearing, any questions for staff? Nancy, you were thinking about it earlier?
So right next to it, obviously, are those currently like 5-acre parcels?
To the north, you have large 5-acre parcels. To the west, you have some large 5-acre parcels. Those are to the north and west in the county. To the south, you do have an R1 5-acre lot that's being currently processed as a subdivision at that location, just to the south of this proposal. But most of those around there are either 5 or 2.5-acre parcels.
Okay, and then it's county, it's just kind of a little, okay, I can see the black outline in that city, and then, then the remainder is county, okay.
Yep, everything outside, the black line would be considered the county.
Okay, okay.
Any more questions for staff?
No.
Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. I'll start this one off really quick. So this is one of those really interesting spots where it's rural now. It's part of our community that will end up probably being absorbed into the city, just like the area around Killdeer in the last couple of projects we just saw. And I think it would be really hard to make the argument that just across the street is apartments at the intersection of the exact same streets. I think it'd be hard to make the argument to say that R2 or multifamily or anything higher density like R2 wouldn't be appropriate. If the apartments across the street are appropriate, then it certainly should be, I would think, appropriate to have R2 here. And then the other thing is that he did mention, and he's right, the applicant mentioned, he's right, that there isn't a whole lot of undeveloped R2. It is we've seen, what, 140 some lots tonight? And there's more coming, and none of them are duplexes. It's just as John put it, I think, the forgotten middle. So it's those little bits of types of housing that we just don't have. We've got apartments, we've got single family, and there's not a whole lot of the duplex. And there's a niche for that, and we don't seem to have that in our community, or at least not enough. So.
I agree with you, Ryan. Sorry, Ray.
Thank you. I feel taller.
I was just getting a call. Hey, maybe this is first to market. This is great. Again, this whole summer we've been getting large multifamily requests, and so this R2 is kind of a breath of fresh air. So I'm all for it. I live right up the street, and so I'm fine with this.
Yeah, I see
Me
no
too.
problem with it. Yeah, me too.
I agree.
I actually agree. I think because of where it's located, an R2 is probably a good fit.
Okay. Look for a motion.
Where's the thing?
Sam, you gonna do it?
Okay, if you can help me. I move to approve file number RZNE 00022019. Finding it meets the approval criteria in Post Falls Municipal Code as outlined in our deliberation. Anything else?
Sound good?
That's good.
All right. We have a motion.
I'll second it.
We have a second. Roll call, please.
Hampi,
Yes.
Kimball,
Yes.
Carey,
Yes.
Bishop,
Yes.
Latham.
Yes.
Okay. On to public hearing number 5. Montrose zone change and PUD amendment file RZNE 0003-2019. Mr. Manley. Open the public hearing.
So the Montrose zone change and PUD amendment. Here you see the file numbers that were mentioned by Ray. There's 2 requests. One of them, the zone change part, is a recommendation to council. The PUD, that will be decided upon you tonight. So one is you decide, one gets forwarded to city council. So what's requested as part of the zone change is for 42 acres that's currently in the city of Post Falls from industrial with the PUD overlay to a requested R1 zoning designation. And mostly this is a request to be consistent with the current PUD that's approved and try to create underlying lots and zoning that matches the end built environment. So looking at the location of this proposal, you see here in the red hatched area, it's centrally located in Montrose, or just a little off kilt to the southwest of being centrally, but for argument's sake, it's centrally located. It is east of McGuire, north of Celtice Way. This request is right at the end of Empire Boulevard, south of the school. It's currently vacant, undeveloped land within that PUD. There's no significant topology or vegetation matters for this. Water provider would be East Green Acres, and the city is the provider for sanitary sewer. So we go through the 6 review criteria for this proposed zone change. Is it consistent with the future land use map? Is it consistent with the goals and policies, street classifications, traffic patterns, existing development, future land uses, community plans, and geographical natural features? This is part of the Montrose PUD, and as stated as part of the intro, what they're proposing really isn't changing the fundamental pretense of what was already approved as part of the Montrose PUD. There's no changing of the roads. There's no request to modify the street layout of that approved PUD. And this is a PUD that's already gone and been vetted out. So in some aspects, it can be viewed as being kind of administratively being requested to match the current built environment. But for that matter, you know, we do have the surrounding zoning go through that. You see the yellow, that's the future designation for residential. The intent, where you see this hatched, isn't for industrial. The intent is for residential for that PUD, so they would like to match that up. You see here to the west is additional single family with that industrial zoning. Kind of brings some dilemmas from an administrator of the code. Let's just say you have someone repairing an automobile in their yard, or they're doing an automotive lawn repair shop, or they're trying to, not that anybody's done that, but being the fact that it's industrial, the PUD and the CCNRs may not allow it, but it kind of brings a potential conflict down the road. So by clarifying future development and having it being residential and a single family home, one-to-one, would help things going down the road. Future land use, you can see here, it's also mostly residential where you see this. You do see some industrial too as part of this, but that'll be that there. You can see that the staff has discussed with the applicant, knowing that you do have some industrial to the south. They're proposing this change to residential at this location, that they're taking it upon themselves to apply a 25-foot buffer along that southern boundary. And the reason for this is the Title 18, it's 182480, I believe, and that's the landscaping section that says that when you have industrial, that industrial and residential can coexist, but you need to apply the buffer. So they would apply that 25 buffer solely on their residential portion, which then would relieve the industrial in the future from having to reciprocate that. Commercial and high-density residential zoning is typically assigned along streets with higher road classifications. Once again, having Okanagan, that's that street that runs east-west, having that industrial, Okanagan really isn't a highly classified road. This area doesn't really have good access to on and off ramps either. So for this is the lot sizing and spacing isn't ideal for industrial either. Limited neighborhood commercial and lower density residential zoning is typically assigned as properties proceed further away from high intense urban activity. This area is mostly a residential neighborhood and has more of a residential feel for that lower density zoning. It's not necessarily in an urban core or an urban node either. Last one deals with industrial zoning. It kind of alludes to kind of what I said about some of the commercial. Industrial zoning is typically assigned as properties preferred with sufficient access to major transportation routes. It does have access to McGuire to the west, but you got to proceed quite a bit north to get to like 53, or you got to go maybe off Kilt to the Pleasant View for an interchange, or potentially go through Spokane. So it's not really ideal, Spokane Street that is, so it's not ideal for industrial either along that Okanagan stretch. So that kind of concludes that zoning analysis part for going to R1. Now going to the PUD aspects, I'm going to read them off, but I do want to note that, once again, nothing that they're proposing is much different from the original approved PUD that's already going through its phasing plan. But any proposal shouldn't compromise these elements either, though. The proposed PUD provides adequate utility services for parking, utilities, services, and parking to service the proposed development. So they already have water as part of the project. That's the first one with East Green Acres to serve the project. Wastewater's already been analyzed as part of the proposed Montrose PUD. They've already done the adjustments to get other utilities for this project. And then as far as parking, mostly if it's commercial or industrial, we do mitigate that through site plan review. And then for the residential ones, they have off-street requirements and they meet those all on site. So parking isn't an issue either. The proposed PUD provides an integrated transportation network and adequately serves the proposed development. They're not changing any of this, so this really what isn't really germane to the request. The proposed PUD provides an enhanced community designed by, I think the most important part here is to acknowledge that PUDs require 10% open space. Everything else is consistent with the current one, and they already are having agreements and arrangements to provide that 10% open space. The proposed PUD provides for timely development and property and security for future completion of maintenance. Once again, none of these are really being modified by the proposal with the request to modify those areas of industrial to residential. Exhibit S6, that's what I mentioned a little bit about that buffer, and that's that section that's going to mitigate any sort of effects of that industrial to the south to their proposal to the north. Here's the agencies that were routed. Post Falls Police and Kootenai County Fire, they both remain neutral on the request. So do you have any comments or questions?
I have a question, if you'll indulge me, Mr. Kimball.
Sure.
So, I'm new to this chair, and in preparing for this, I've struggled with the PUD amendment and the zone change, because as I'm looking at it, at least as I interpret it, there's really not any change to the PUD except that the zoning is changing, which as a result, we're changing the PUD to reflect what would be the future zoning. Am I interpreting that correctly?
Yes, that currently within the PUD, we have an area.
PUD would remain the same uses, except it would be zoned R1 now instead of industrial. And so the zone change is the extent of the change to the PUD with some added buffering.
Yeah, one clarification though is the PUD did have that strip south of Okanagan for future industrial uses. So by amending the PUD to residential south of Okanagan brings then the zone change consistent with that PUD, whether it's approved or not. So if it was, let's just say, denied, then the proposed zone change then would be inconsistent with that PUD.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does to me, but I don't know if it does for them.
No, it does, because I had the same question. I was going to ask the same thing. I wasn't sure.
So motion-wise, we're going to need two motions for this public hearing.
One for the zone change and one for the PUD.
Probably the PUD first, and then the zone change, since the zone change would have to be consistent with the PUD.
So
I think that's what
That's what I would recommend, is you would make a motion on the PUD that would amend that portion south of Okanagan from industrial to residential.
Okay.
Then the proposed zone change would then modify that because.
But then dovetail into that.
Yeah.
Okay. Have any other questions?
Yeah,
Mr.
I
Manley?
just wanted to clarify. So the buffer that we're talking about in the zone so that it would be from R1 to industrial. So the buffer there that they're talking about, is that part of the zone change? Is it in there somewhere, or are they just?
So the condition is going to be applied to that PUD. So the condition of the PUD approval.
So that is not in the report as a condition?
Yeah, it is.
It is in the report as a condition, okay.
But only for the PUD, it's not
For the
tied to the zone
PUD.
change.
Okay, for the PUD.
Because we don't condition zone
Yeah,
changes.
we don't condition zone changes.
Right,
with-
okay, gotcha, all right. I got it now.
Okay. Any more questions for Mr. Manley? Seeing none?
Confuse it worse.
Applicant, please.
Do you want any specific slide? Do you want this one, or?
Well, I've got a PowerPoint.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Okay, which one is yours? This one? It's mine. You know which one is yours? This one?
Could be. I sent it to a kid. So yeah, that's it there. Right click. Right click.
Yeah, if you want to go to the right,
Yeah,
to go to the
okay.
next slide back.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, my name is Kevin Sneidmiller. I reside at 6552 East Octavia Court here in Post Falls. I'm here representing the applicant, Greenstone Kootenai 2. I'll be brief with my remarks. I know it's kind of late in the evening and be happy to answer any questions. So we are bringing forward a request, as Mr. Manley said, for a zone change of approximately 42 acres. Our objective is for the request of the zone map change is for the area generally located east of Montrose 10th edition. Those were those single-family lots that Mr. Manley's map showed, and north of the Orgill site. We're proposing this to be consistent with the approved subdivision that came before you, the Planning Commission in 2016, and also at that time we brought forward some amendments to the PUD. So it's really to try to clean up the underlying zoning. This area was always proposed to be single-family, residential, and some cluster housing was another designation back in 1998 when Montrose was first proposed. Again, that area south of the future Okanagan Street, Mr. Manley referenced that currently is zoned industrial and was intended to be industrial at the beginning. The issue we have with that, and the reason we're proposing it also be changed to single-family R1 designation, is it's a very long and linear site, and we've always had some physical constraints that we could never propose increasing the size of that industrial site. Since the mid-90s, there are 2 6-inch force mains running along the future alignment of Okanagan Street that are feeding down to the treatment facility. So we really had obviously no ability to build over the top of those, so we couldn't change the configuration of the site, and it just did not lend itself very well to light industrial. It ranges from 180 to 200 feet deep along there is all. So that's the reason we're proposing that change. Again, what we're suggesting or proposing is that the area south of Okanagan would be large lot development to lessen the impact of the number of residents backing up to the current industrial sites there. We're not a huge proponent of large lot and residential development, but we think this is an area that fits itself well. Again, the lots would range in size from 70 to 80 to 90 feet wide, and again, the site is currently 180 to 200 feet deep, and so that's the reason we're proposing that. Again, as Mr. Manley said, and we concur with that condition, and this is an exhibit we did that shows what the 25-foot buffer at the back of the lots would look like. And again, the section of the code that Mr. Manley referenced, it not only speaks to the dimensions of that buffer being 25 feet, but it speaks to the planting density that is required in that buffer. And this exhibit shows what it would look like with that planting density per the city code. So we think that it will do a very good job of buffering it. Again, we concur that the entire 25 feet be solely on the residential lots. And again, because of the depth of those lots, we have enough room to do that. In conclusion, we believe this request is consistent with the goals and policies of the comprehensive plan. The request meets the municipal code requirements for adjoining land uses. The request did not require any changes to the Montrose PUD, as Mr. Manley stated. And future infrastructure will be designed to meet the needs of this request. It will probably hurry the development of Okanagan and the connection of that because of the residential nature of it. And again, as I stated earlier, we concur with staff's recommendation that the 25-foot buffer be solely on the residential land. So we appreciate your consideration of this request. Be happy to answer any questions.
Do we have any questions for the applicant?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
All right. Do we have any public testimony?
We have none.
Okay. Seeing none, I assume there's no need for any rebuttal. Do we have any questions for staff prior to closing the public hearing?
No.
None? Close the public hearing. We'll start with just some discussion. Nancy?
I think it makes sense. I don't see any issues with it.
Okay.
Why is it?
Sam?
I like it. As a former Montrose resident, I know you have a quality product, and it will look nice and have a nice buffer from that industrial, so I like it.
Okay. Mark?
I'm all for it. I think it makes it absolutely perfect sense.
Thank you, Joe?
Oh, me too. I think it's more just cleaning up things.
Yeah. To me, that seems like a housekeeping item.
Yeah.
More than anything, and the fact that they're doing that buffer yard and doing some large lot to keep the density next to that industrial and therefore the impact on the number of houses low is, I think it's fantastic. I think it's a great job of planning, and Montrose has been around for better part of 22 years now, and if it's not industrial now, it's time. So I think both the zone change and the PUD amendment make a lot of sense. So I look for two motions. The first one for the PUD amendment.
I have a question, too. On the PUD amendment, is that an approval, request for or an approval, or is it a recommendation to forward?
It's an approval, correct?
It's an approval?
Yes.
Okay.
And then the zone change would be a recommendation.
The zone change would be the recommendation. Okay. I move to approve the Montrose West PUD amendment, PUD-0002-2020, subject to the condition 1 as noted in the staff report.
A second?
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Kimball?
Yes?
Carey?
Yes.
Bishop?
Yes.
Latham?
Yes.
Campy?
Yes.
Okay, now for the second motion regarding the zone change.
Oh, me, okay. I move to recommend approval of the Montrose zone change, RZNE-0003-2019, as presented. Was there any conditions?
No.
Why do you want to approve it? Because it meets all 6 of the standards?
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry, yes. Noting that it meets all 6 of the standards for a subdivision.
For zone change.
Zone change, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Bishop?
Yes.
Latham?
Yes.
Campy?
Oh, yes.
Kimball?
Yes.
Carey?
Yes. Sorry, it's getting late.
It is getting late. We've got one more.
PUDs and everything mixed up in the brain.
Right. So for our final public hearing tonight, Montrose West zone change and PUD amendment file RZNE 0005-2019, Mr. Manley, opening the hearing.
So John, can I just say, same public hearing, different place?
Right next door.
I move to approve.
So, Montrose West zone change and PUD amendment just will look very familiar to the last one. The applicant's a little different, though. It's the city of Post Falls. Reason being is this affected area, which you'll see, is involving a lot of other platted lots where there's already single-family homes, and so it made most sense for the city to be the applicants in this scenario.
Okay.
So same request, though, for the zone change as the last public hearing from industrial to single-family residential with the same PUD request. Location, here you see it here, just a little bit of the west. This is where all those single-family homes. There's a little bit just to the south of Okanagan that needs that PUD clarification or amendment. Same information here about the site, water provider, East Green Acres, city providing sewer. Zone change criteria, we're still looking, is it consistent with the future land use map, the goals and policies found in the comprehensive plan, of which in the staff report you saw that it was consistent with. You also saw in the staff report that there was no changes to street classification and traffic patterns that was otherwise approved within the Montrose PUD. And this, it does have that community plan of the Montrose PUD. Here you see the surrounding zoning, R1 to the north. So this R1 will be an extension of to already R1 zones, and an extension of other single-family homes per that PUD. There's that future land use map that you see there. It's mostly R1, therefore consistent. Looking at the commercial and high density and residential zoning, again, this isn't an ideal location for either one of those, as it's not near a higher road classification. Lower density is typically assigned as properties proceed further. This is an area that's already within a Montrose PUD designated for residential. It's constructed as residential, so we're, once again, kind of getting to the housekeeping point of it all. The last one is industrial, and it's not applicable. So that wraps up zoning. Are we good there?
We don't need any buffers or anything. There's nothing in
Well,
this.
we have a buffer, right?
We will for the PUD part.
Okay.
The zoning part, none, but the PUD part is where we will need to, that's where that
Okay.
condition applies.
Okay, I was jumping ahead, right?
Yeah, because
Sorry.
I didn't put that exhibit, but the PUD from Okanagan south very clearly delineated everything south of Ogan as being proposed for future industrial. So since the PUD is the container of that use, industrial use, we got to modify that PUD container. So that's why it has a PUD amendment and why it will then have that condition for that buffer.
Okay.
But in looking at this PUD amendment, as far as utility services and parking, just like the last one, it's all addressed in the original Montrose PUD and it's settled, so none of those are changing. As far as the transportation network for this and facilitating it, all this, once again, is no different than the approved Montrose PUD and has been addressed and vetted out within that approval process, and it meets those as well. Enhancing community design. Once again, we're back to that 10% being the real key indicator here of this one is we're still meeting that 10% and it's already been assigned and there's a plan for meeting that 10% with this PUD. The fourth one, proposed PUD provides a timely development, property to secure future completion and maintenance. The applicant in the last public hearing kind of made the biggest point with this. You may be able to get Okanagan expedited and actually see more development in a more nearer time than otherwise may be the case. Now we're back to that per exhibit S6 and that piece that is just right here where you see a little bit of purple. Right here in the southwest corner, that's that little bit of piece that needs that change, and it's going to go to residential and require that buffer along that southern piece right about this location where I'm highlighting that buffer.
Only right there.
Only right there west of Lean Street.
Bless you.
But it is not in the, there is no condition in here, though.
Yeah, it's on the PUD.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Okay, jeez. Oh, okay.
So there's one
There it
condition
is.
being.
I see it,
yeah.
yeah, okay, right there.
So there's the agencies that were routed, police and fire. They commented and they remain neutral on it. I'd stand for any questions you have for me as.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Manley?
No.
No.
There's,
Right.
And you're also acting as the applicant, right? On
Correct.
behalf of the city?
Okay. Do you have any public comment?
We have none?
Okay, so no rebuttal?
None.
Any more questions for Mr. Manley?
No.
Close the public hearing. Discussion. I think this is very similar to the last one.
Very similar.
Yeah.
It's even more of a no-brainer. It's just, it's consistent with the comprehensive plan. It's consistent with the existing land uses across the board. I mean, it's already built up as a subdivision. Why should it be zoned industrial? So I think it completely makes sense on the zone change part, and the PUD is just, it's housekeeping, and the one condition makes a lot of sense.
Sounds good.
Any other comments? I'll look for a motion
I will.
for the
For the PUD first.
PUD first.
Okay. I move to approve Montrose West PUD amendment PUD-0001-2020, finding that it meets the approval criteria in the Post Falls Municipal Code as outlined in our deliberations, and with condition 1 as contained in the staff report.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Carey,
Yes.
Bishop,
Yes.
Latham,
Yes.
Hamby,
Yes.
Kimball,
Yes. On to the zone change motion.
All right, well, I'm on a roll here. So I will move to recommend approval of Montrose West zone change, RZNE-0005-2019, finding that it meets the approval criteria in the Post Falls Municipal Code as outlined in our deliberations.
I'll go ahead and second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Latham,
Yes.
Hamby,
Yes.
Bishop,
Yes.
Kimball,
Yes.
Carey,
Yes.
All right. On to item 5. Mr. Manley, do we have any new business?
None.
Administrative staff reports?
Nope.
So, I know you haven't heard my voice enough tonight. Based upon your decisions this evening, we will be bringing back written recommendations or decisions for the Planning and Zoning Commission to review and approve at a subsequent meeting per that direction. Just make sure that's your direction to staff, and I guess staff, because we're all staff for you.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes, that's correct.
All right.
Any commission comments?
Good night.
Sam, we're going to miss you.
Yeah, thank
Oh,
you.
yeah.
What?
Sam's leaving.
Final hurrah.
And I need a motion for adjournment.
This is also Mark's last meeting.
It is mine.
Oh, my gosh.
But it's not.
We,
Don't they have to serve until they're replaced? They can't leave?
I don't know. I don't know if I have another
This
option.
was a life.
that an
This was
option?
for life.
We need them.
12 years or something. 10 or 12.
That's
that
not
an option?
life.
I've beaten all of you guys.
You have.
Not-
We
not-
can,
You've
we
beaten
can't
me.
make you show up. We've
Well,
pretty much gotten rid of slavery.
offering that as an option. I would be willing until a replacement was found.
I would too, actually.
Specifically, it was a replacement that I approved of.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Isn't
guys.
that what our code requires?
I'll let the mayor know.
Okay.
okay. Need a motion for adjournment.
I move to adjourn.
Adjourned.